So are you thinking about moving to Frisco, Texas? Or is it Plano, Texas? Or which one should you choose? Which one is better? Well, there's a lot of pros and cons to both Frisco and Plano, and in this video that's exactly what we're going to discuss, is basically the big differences between Frisco and Plano. So if you're looking at making a move, maybe you're coming from out of state, maybe California, New York, or Illinois, as where most of our out-of-state clients are coming from right now, and you're not really sure between Frisco and Plano, you've heard both of them are pretty good, and they are. But what are the big differences? That's definitely what we're going to discuss in this video. And if you stick around till the end, then I'll share with you my personal preference as well. And we're going to get after it right now. If this is your first time on the channel and you want to know everything there is about living in Dallas, Texas, or even the surrounding areas like Frisco and Plano, then subscribe below, tap the bell for notifications so you can be the first to learn about the current market in Dallas. My name is Levi. You know my team and I, we get calls and emails every single day from people just like you and you and you and you looking to make their move to Dallas. We absolutely love it. So whether you're moving in 9 days or 90 days, just give us a call, shoot us a text, send us an email, or even schedule a Zoom below in the description. That's our favorite, so we can put a face to a name, but we're happy to help you make a smooth move to Dallas. So as I mentioned, what are the big differences between Frisco and Plano? Well, they border each other in North Dallas, all right? So they're both suburbs in North Dallas, and they're really just divided by a major tollway, which is 121 or Sam Rayburn. But other than that, there's quite a few similarities. But here's the thing, Frisco is a master plan suburb. Right now, they've just broken over 200,000 as far as a population. Around 207,000 is the current population of Frisco, and it's really started to boom over the last 20 years. Basically, the early 2000s, whenever Stonebriar Mall went in, right at the Dallas North Tollway, and what is now 121, the Sam Rayburn Tollway, that went in around 2000, and when that happened, Frisco just exploded from there. Stonebriar was a huge mall that basically, you know, rivaled Grapevine Mills Mall, which Grapevine Mills Mall was kind of like the big mall in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So when Stonebriar came in, it was brand new. It was all the rage and all the craze, right? And so the the housing boom just exploded after that. So Plano is just south of that and is a lot more dense in population. They're both actually similar in size, but the population in Plano is much higher. So around 290,000 people in the Plano area as we speak. So as far as you know, a little bit more crowded, you could say Plano's a little bit more crowded over Frisco, but Frisco is still developing. I would say most of the development has already happened in Plano because that's one thing. Plano was not necessarily a master plan suburb like Frisco. So Plano was pieced together mainly through the 80s and 90s, and that's where a lot of the homes were constructed, and you'll see that's still the case. There's not a lot of new construction going on at least in mass in Plano. There's custom new construction going on in Plano where they're basically tearing down these older homes and building up, but even that is pretty limited in Plano, as to where in Frisco, there is a ton of new construction, not only in the past 20 years, but even going forward where there's still communities popping up. Now there is extremely limited inventory and there's not a lot of homes available right now, but we're still finding some for our clients here and there throughout Frisco. But otherwise, Frisco is still developing, it's still growing, and it is actually projected that, and I'm probably jumping a little bit ahead here, but it's projected that Frisco will have more office space than downtown Dallas within the next 5 to 10 years. So you can see there's a lot of movement heading up there as well, especially in corporations. And we'll see that as there's some major corporations in Plano. So Plano is pretty popular for corporate space as well. There is actually over 20 companies moved from out of state into Plano during last year during the pandemic. So that should give you an idea about the growth and you know, as far as corporate space goes in Plano. So that's just something to keep in mind. However, Frisco is not that far behind because they headquarter the Dallas Stars, the Dallas Cowboys, FC Dallas, the Major League Soccer team. They have the Rough Riders, which is the baseball team, and they have the Legends, which is a basketball team. So you'll see the major sports teams are calling Frisco home. And again, with all the new construction, all the new buildings, all the new office space, the commercial buildings they're building in Frisco are absolutely beautiful. And I'll tell you what, when you first hit Frisco, it's a sight to see with all the new high-rises going up and around there. So just something to keep in mind. But Frisco, just as late as 2018, was named the #1 place to live in the United States. And it's actually won that award a couple of times over the last decade. So Frisco is pretty popular, and that's because it is a master plan suburb, which means the city has put in a lot of regulations. I want to say regulations, but stipulations and building controls to make sure everything falls in line with the master plan, right? So that means buildings need to look a certain way. There's not a lot of there's uniformity, but it's not cookie cutter, if that makes sense. So they want a consistency throughout Frisco without making everything look exactly the same. So that's a big plus as to where Plano was just kind of pieced together here and there, and there's two sides to Plano, East Plano and West Plano. West Plano's a lot newer, and because it's off of the tollway, right? So anytime you're near a tollway, that's going to be a more pricier area, and that's where a lot of the nicer neighborhoods are, the better shopping for Plano. So something to keep in mind. But Plano has been ranked before up at least to #7 place to live in the United States. So it's not that far behind. And really, Plano was kind of like one of the first suburbs, I would say, that was outside of the Dallas circle. That was kind of like the place to be for notoriety, you could say, as a suburb. Plano was always kind of like the OG suburb as far as, hey, you got some money, you kind of want to be outside of Dallas, or you don't want to be in the Dallas Independent School District, you go to Plano. And so it still holds true to that, but it's kind of like the old school money, you could say. Again, it's kind of like 80s and 90s, right? So Frisco is definitely where new money is headed, and everything there is pretty new as far as being built within the last 20 years, and it's still developing. The median income in Frisco is around $106,000 as compared to Plano is around $97,000. So that doesn't really mean much, but just to kind of give you an idea. So whenever you're looking at outdoor activities, if you're the outdoors type of person, in Frisco there's over 50 parks right now, or right around 50 parks. But the thing is they're not as developed as they are in Plano. So that's something to keep in mind. I would say a pro of Plano is that it is more established, right? So you're going to get more mature neighborhoods, more mature trees, old growth trees, a lot more foliage, especially in the park system. There's actually over 4,300 acres of parks throughout Plano. And Oak Point Park is one of the largest in the Metroplex with over 800 acres. They have zip lining there, hiking, biking, all kinds of stuff at Oak Point Park in Plano. It's a huge nature reserve. And I mean, 800 acres, you could get lost there for a couple of days, right? There's not really much like that in Frisco. There's several parks, like I mentioned, around 50 or so. But they're just not as established as they are in Plano. Plano's going to have the growth and the trees and everything like that around there too is going to be a lot more developed. So I think it makes for a little bit better experience on the outdoor side. So it's a little bit more fun as far as if you're that outdoors types of person. So that's just something to keep in mind. So Plano's going to be more established. Frisco is more new and developing. All right. Now, when it comes to shopping, I mentioned earlier, Frisco has like the Stonebriar Mall that was really the centerpiece of the Frisco real estate boom there, Stonebriar Mall. It's a huge mall. They've got a huge theater there, lots of restaurants, shops, everything you need there. They've also got the shops at Starwood. You know, Starwood's kind of one of the original neighborhoods in Frisco, and it's really nice. So it's also, I would say, you could call it somewhat old school OG neighborhood there in Frisco. It's just well established, and you know, that's where you want to be, one of the spots you want to be if you're going to be in Frisco. But they have the shops at Starwood are really nice, and then they have the Star District, of course, now where the Cowboys, you know, have their headquarters and their their practice facility and stuff like that. That's now called the Star District, which is, that's really houses a lot of restaurants and bars and shopping around there as well. We've actually meet several clients there because whenever they come into town, that's where they typically want to stay, is around the Star District in Frisco. It's a great spot to be. So that is that's kind of, and then when you look at Plano as far as shopping, of course the most well-known area in Plano is the shops at Willow Bend. The shops at Willow Bend are very high-end, very prestigious. That's the place you want to be when you're shopping around the Willow Bend area. Also, they've got Legacy West and the shops at Legacy, which is all new development, and that's just on the southern border of Frisco, literally right across the tollway. So when you come down the Dallas North Tollway and cross over Sam Rayburn Tollway, you run right into shops of Legacy and Legacy West, and that is both very well established now, newer within the last few years, has been built up and well established as far as shops, restaurants. I would say adult nightlife when you go there. If you want to take the spouse out without the kids, or even with the kids, it's a great spot for either. So there's not a lot of craziness running around there. It's adult related nightlife, you could say. So everyone goes home early, but otherwise, also they've got Legacy Food Hall, Legacy Food Hall there, which we featured in a couple of our other vlogs as well. Something like 40-something chefs there, some of the best. It's just a large variety in there. It's always crowded, always packed, and then they have outdoor area where they have some concerts and things like that. But that's really the newer shopping that's happening in Plano, and it's literally on the border of Frisco. So if you're in Frisco, you can just bop right over and get there to that area. And then if you're looking at school districts, right? So everyone always wants to know about the schools. Well, Frisco is, those public schools are a little bit better ranked. Most anywhere you go in Frisco, the public school system is going to be A or A+ rated. And so that's why a lot of people tend to flock to Frisco over Plano. Plano still has highly ranked schools, but depending on what area you're in, you might drop down into the 7, 8s, or 9s, but you really want to look at the scores. So that's something to factor in. You want to look at the things that make up that score, right? Because they factor in several different topics as far as test scores, completion, diversity, things like that. So look at what's pulling down that rating. A school could be rated a 7 or an 8, and it could be rated that for some reason that's not even related to test scores or something like that. So if that's what your major concern is, you probably want to do a little research on that if you're going to end up in an area. But otherwise, Plano does have some lower rated schools, but they have less schools as well. So there's a lot more students at the schools. That's the thing about Frisco. Frisco really focuses on having a lot more schools in place, and so they have smaller class sizes. Frisco actually has 10 high schools, 17 middle schools, and 40-something elementary schools. And they did that purposefully so that people, the students there would have smaller class sizes. So the student to teacher ratio is much more manageable. And so that's what a lot of Frisco residents like about the schools, is there's so many that they feel like their kids are really, paid attention to, right? As to where Plano, of course, with almost 100,000 more people and less schools, it's a little bit, class sizes are a little bit larger there. Now, and then as far as historic districts, if that's your thing, if you like kind of a little bit of the old, they both have really great historic districts. I would say Plano's is probably a little bit more happening around that area. They're both probably similar. I mean, they both got some great shops, boutique shops, some restaurants, and some coffee shops, and a bar here or there that you could grab a drink at. So both have really cool historic districts that you could check out. Frisco has the Heritage Museum as well. We featured that on, I featured that on a couple of other videos, but that's just something that you could always check out if you're into history, to check that out. And so, and then as far as kids, if you want to have things to do for your kids, right? You want to get them out of the house. Well, there's one of the major attractions in Plano is the Crayola experience. And that's where they can go in and pretty much do everything Crayola related. It's a lot a lot to do in there. We feature that in a couple of our other videos. Also in Frisco though, inside Stonebriar Mall is Kidzania, which Kidzania is crazy. You take your kids there and they run a city inside that place. They actually have an adult area where they prefer you to go. Now the kids have tracking. They put on these bracelets and everything, so they can be tracked when they go throughout there. But they can pretend to be different job or business owners or have jobs. They can be like police officers or nurses or firemen or firewomen or just whatever. It allows them to experience. Kind of like running a city. They have this currency that they can earn for their jobs and use inside the city. They can run for council, mayor, things like that. So it really allows them to get immersed in there. Now, you want to spend some time there, so just be mindful when you go. Make sure you've got some time to hang out with them. But otherwise, it's a lot of fun, and the kids really like it. And then on top of that, you look at the job opportunities between Frisco and Plano. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of the major sports teams are headquartered in Frisco now. And the cool thing about that too, for the Frisco schools, kind of going back to that, is they have some of the partnerships with like the Cowboys and the Stars and things like that, and the Legends. So that allows some of those schools to use those facilities for practice and other things. So that's a great opportunity. And we've, as I mentioned in one of our other videos, Frisco was rated one of the best cities to raise a young athlete. So if you've got athletes in the family and you want them to be in a good school district, then Frisco's probably slightly above Plano on that one. And then, but Plano, again, corporations, they've got some major corporations there. They have Toyota, Frito-Lay, Capital One, there's several others, and as I mentioned earlier, over 20-something businesses moved to Plano during the pandemic, but companies are moving to Frisco as well. I know T-Mobile's up there in Frisco, and again, they are expanding the office space quite a bit. So if you're going to live in Plano and work in Frisco, or live in Frisco and work in Plano, you're really not going to have that much of a commute. I mean, really, if you're going to be working in downtown Dallas, that is where Plano's going to win on that aspect, because Plano is closer to Dallas, would probably save you an extra 10 to 20 minutes, just depending on traffic, if you're going to be commuting downtown. So a lot of people live in Plano and Frisco to commute downtown, but Plano is closer to downtown, so that's an easier shot to get there. You've got, depending on which side of Plano you live in, or even Frisco, you got 75 or the Dallas North Tollway to get there. Of course, tolls are a factor living in Plano and Frisco, because they have the easiest access. But again, jumping around, you're going to have some tolls, and that could range, just depending on how much you drive. I know people are driving a lot less these days because they're either working from home. And if you live in the area, most people that live in Frisco stay in Frisco. They don't venture out that often, or they don't go downtown to downtown Dallas. And I would say that's mostly the same with Plano as well, unless people are commuting. But again, since coronavirus, not a lot of people, that's been cut down quite a bit as far as commuting. So those are really kind of the main differences. I said if you stay till the end, I'll tell you my personal preference. I tell you what, if I don't want to mess around with anything, I want something shiny and new, I'm going to head to Frisco. But at the same time, if I think with my investor cap, then probably Plano. If I find a house in Plano and do some renovations on it, which most of the homes there will be outdated. And so that's the other thing. If you're looking for a project, then Plano is probably the better option. But you could get some good equity, you do some renovations, and you could increase the value of your home significantly, right? So homes in Plano are in demand, but the main problem is they're mostly outdated, or it's custom construction where somebody buys a home, tears it down, and builds their own custom home there. So there's not a lot of new development, not a lot of new construction communities going up in Plano. So that would be the option. So if I'm thinking kind of like an investor standpoint, maybe Plano, but at the same time, whatever you buy in Frisco is going to increase in value as well. Actually, I just spoke to somebody that went under contract in November of last year, and their same floor plan in their community right now is selling for $70,000 higher. So how do you like that instant equity, so to speak, in less than a year almost? It's pretty crazy. But again, You know, whether you're moving in 9 days or 90 days, just give us a call, shoot us a text, send us an email, or schedule a Zoom, all in the description below. We prefer Zoom just because we always like to put a face to a name. That would be great, but we know you're busy, so a call or a text or an email, hey, we'll get back to you either way. Yes, it'll probably be me that answers the phone, I'm sure, if you call. So I'd be happy to talk to you. You know, we're working with a lot of out-of-state buyers and clients right now. We absolutely love it. And so again, just let us know how we can help you in any way. And also watch the next video that pops up here at the end. I mean, if you want to look at, we've got full vlog tours on Frisco and Plano. So if you want to watch those individually and kind of compare, and then also I have some map tours on both of those as well, and some pros and cons on those. So really, if you really want to kind of dig into each one individually, then I've got at least 3 videos on each Frisco and Plano that you can check out directly after this video. And you know, we really appreciate it. So until next time, well, we hope to see you around town.